everyone. So, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and we wanted to come and share just some reflections that we've had around our own journey of walking this path of marriage and partnership for a decade, and kind of what we've learned along the way that has been a helpful framework for us to also understand how to be in a relationship for this next decade, and some things that I personally would have liked to know at the beginning of our relationship, because it would have probably made it a little bit more smooth sailing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some reflections on just what's most important to us, what's kept us, what's held us together in a good way through all the ups and the downs, that's kept us inspired, that's kept us continuing to reach towards each other, even in the most challenging times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, our relationship was not a conventional relationship by any means. It was not something that, like, I mean, for me, it was a very sort of new paradigm of relationships as well, because it wasn't something like we came together just from like our attraction and like hormones and all of these things that happen at the beginning of a relationship for most people. Um, we were friends for a period of time before we came together. And really, we came together with a shared vision. After a lot of talking about like what each one of us individually wanted to create in our lives, we just saw that there was a lot of kind of overlap. And we felt like, well, you want to do this, I want to do this, let's try to do it together. And it's been a very deep process of learning how to be in relationship, what love really is. Because for me specifically, I don't know if it's the same for you, my ideas of love were very much conditioned from like different ideals and ideas that I had about relationships. And the container of our relationship has really helped me to understand love at a much more expansive way that I feel like could have only happened through the process that we've been through. A love that's unshakable, that's beyond these ideas of like him being a certain way or fulfilling certain needs or the relationship looking in a certain way. It's been a very deep sort of process of deeply appreciating and respecting and honoring and loving without all the romanticized ideals that I probably had as a young woman when we entered the relationship.
Yeah. And like we've been talking about, just having a clear vision of something that each of us share has been a key factor in helping us to navigate the most challenging times along the way, and helping us to keep a context for when those internal conditioned reactionary responses to the moment arise. It keeps this context of, okay, there's something greater that we're doing together, and can we find a way to work together to overcome, to resolve these conflicts, these challenges, which most of the time are just misunderstandings, because we're both coming from the same place from different angles in different ways, and there's a misunderstanding perhaps of what the other one is doing, why they're doing it, and there's a story about what's happening, where it's coming from, about the whole thing that we're fighting with inside of ourselves. So it's a very deeply personal thing. Anything that we say about the outside is always just this deeply personal experience that is very subjective. It has nothing to do with the reality of what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, also, like, the way that I see it is like you're your own universe and you have your whole experience of your life. I'm my own universe and I have my own experience of life. And then these two universes come together. And for me, for a large part of the relationship, I really believed that the way that I saw things was the way that you saw things, and the way that I interpreted things was really what was happening. And it took a while for me to really see, like, wow, no, this is actually this beautiful platform of neutrality, as you just said recently, that gives me the opportunity to see what arises for myself as an opportunity and a blessing for being able to see things that perhaps I wasn't able to see before, that I didn't want to see before because they're painful. I mean, relationships are such a blessed opportunity to have this beautiful mirror in front of you to see different aspects and dimensions of yourself that you wouldn't have an opportunity to do with any other person, or perhaps with another person. But
I mean, even in any, interrupting, spiritual practice or anything like that, it can be very difficult to see these other dimensions that get really reflected clearly in the container of a relationship.
But that, I feel, is the biggest sort of blessing that the other person is bringing, is these windows of clarity to see just the whole inner landscape that is beyond our reach on a day-to-day basis, to see where are the parts that are still needing to be integrated from our life, from our experience prior to that partner. It's a beautiful opportunity for immense growth and healing that can be really challenging. And I think that's another thing for many people. We have these ideals about, oh, if this is my person, then there's not going to be any challenges, or it's not going to be, we won't fight ever, we won't ever get angry. And it's like, no, these are the realities of being in relationship with another. There's going to be this rubbing that happens. And somebody just recently shared this beautiful analogy of like, we're these diamonds that need to be polished, and it's our partners. If you have children, it's your children and your partners that help to bring the friction, but it's not like a comfortable thing. It's a really intense, it's like the diamond is a very strong material, and it needs something of equal strength to be able to polish it. And that polishing and that rubbing can be very uncomfortable. And unless there's the commitment and the understanding about what we're signing up for when we're signing up to be in a relationship, it's very easy to say, okay, this is too uncomfortable, I'm going to leave. But then we miss the gem of the relationship, is that opportunity to do that deeper work, that opportunity to do that polishing that we have agreed, consciously or unconsciously, to come together to help each other do.
Yeah, I mean, consciousness is a huge element. Consciously understanding as much as possible, having a reflective understanding and awareness that holds the container of the relationship, the commitment being really like it's the container, but it's like the outer edge that holds it together, the commitment that yes, we are in a formal togetherness, and that togetherness involves rubbing as its very nature. It's just like there's one diamond, there's another diamond. The diamonds shape each other by rubbing diamond against diamond. And in that process, there's also a light that is generated in that friction. There is a, there's a heat. Sometimes it's felt in the physical body. There's a heat when there's that friction happening. But also this light that brings the awareness of the deeper dimensions of what's happening, and an opportunity for choice, which in every single moment is there, because there's the commitment is not just like you make a commitment, it's held together because it will shatter to a million pieces if we rely alone on commitment. There's like 4 pillars that we've been talking about: consciousness, commitment, communication, and choice. And choice really is a moment-to-moment. I am choosing, and I'm choosing love, I'm choosing togetherness, I'm choosing the way through this challenge that I'm facing inside of myself to meet the other.
Mm-hmm.
And really that's where I think communication comes in, is that process of communion and meeting the other universe,
Mm-hmm.
because that universe will speak, that universe will bridge to this universe through communication,
Mm-hmm.
through that synchronization that occurs when there is this understanding of just where the other person is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
What is their experience? Can I relate to this other person as, in a sense, myself?
Mm-hmm.
Can I understand them from neutrality, or am I so fixed in my position and my views that I can't even shift an inch to see a different possibility, a different perspective? And in that sense, perhaps a lot of times my own ways that I've done things that I can do better,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that I can continue to grow and evolve. And this is really the blessing of this togetherness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like relationship in itself is a moment-to-moment choice. There's a very, like, relationships are very alive. Marriages are meant to be very alive. It's not like, this is another big lesson that I've received throughout these years, is that when we get into these relationships and we take the vow of committing to another person, that is not the end point. That's the beginning point.
Yeah.
And that commitment and that vow is renewed in every moment that we're consciously showing up and choosing to show up, choosing love, choosing to continue to walk forward with the other partner. There is no thing that is holding the relationship together other than that conscious choice. I mean, we can say that a marriage contract is what holds people together, but in a real relationship, it's the moment-to-moment choice.
Yeah.
So how am I going to show up to meet myself in the context of the relationship, to meet the other in the context of the relationship, to continue to choose to show up and to do whatever work is necessary to continue to evolve? Because I feel like another thing about relationships is that there's this constant change that's happening, this constant evolution of the two people in relationship with each other and of the relationship itself. And over a period of time, the relationship goes through ups and downs, and it's the natural kind of unfolding of a path of togetherness, that there's going to be high moments, there's going to be low moments, there's going to be times where he might be feeling bad and I'm feeling well, and then I can help hold that space for him, or I'm feeling bad and he's feeling well, and we help support each other and create balance. And over time, as we have these high moments and these low moments, if we get to the low moments and there's nothing holding us together in those low moments that is greater than the conflict that might be arising in that moment, and there's not the active choice of saying, I choose to continue to go through this challenge with you, we're going to get through this, let's work through this together, that can be the end of a relationship right there. And
if there's no commitment, it is the end.
For many relationships,
for relationships, even if they're not partnerships, in just our lives, that's what happens.
But I have found that it's in those low moments, in those moments of challenge, there's been times in our relationship where, just to be completely honest, I haven't really seen a way out. But it's like we overcome those challenges, and then the relationship and the love is so much deeper and sweeter because there's such a deeper appreciation and respect and an understanding of this gift to walk with another person and to choose to walk in a good way with another person, that it just brings the relationship deeper, and it goes from the surface level of relationships when the relationships start to this deepening of a process of deepening into that commitment, but deepening into the love, deepening into self-love too, because as you navigate these experiences with the other person, it helps you also soften to yourself and find
your authenticity.
To be able to continue to meet the other person more authentically, more openly, in greater freedom. I think that's another part of relationships that's really important, is the freedom. there's the freedom and the choice, and really understanding that our partners are free and we're free, and that in that freedom, it's a gift that we're choosing to continue to gift each other this experience of walking together, but there's nothing holding it together. And I think for a lot of people that can bring up fear that like there's nothing really holding the relationship other than choice. But at the same time, there's a deeper appreciation that like, wow, I was just horrible to this person and this person is still choosing to like love me. And it's like, wow, can I love myself too in that same way? Like, can I show up in my vulnerability and allow myself to be seen in the totality? Because I think that's another part of relationships, is we get to see each other in our vulnerabilities without all these masks and projections and ideas that we, or like, masks that we put on for each other in our world. And little by little, as we remove those masks and we see that we're still loved and we see that we can still love another person in their totality, there's just great healing that comes from that.
Yeah. And this ultimate reality of a partnership, I mean, it's a spiritual path in itself. There are many different traditions out there that have these sort of like monastic type paths, that you're solo, you're alone, you go into these retreats, you're by yourself, you have to do this type of work like that. And what happens in that dynamic is the individual can perhaps feel comfortable in certain settings where they're able to focus entirely upon a single dimension of their experience. However, in the world, how does it translate? How does it relate? And this is really a way of bringing any sort of sense of spiritual practice and deepening and coming into a self-realization to a practical, embodied reality where the togetherness is really an opportunity to love fully. Love fully is not separated, it's not differentiated, it's not just love another person. When that love is able to encompass oneself, then it will truly be able to be given to another person, to be relating with another person with a complete unconditional loving acceptance. And that translates to oneself, and it translates to many dimensions of one's life. But as the challenges come up, the path is really to understand the orientation that this is a container, this is a spiritual path. Can I see what's coming up inside of me as something inside of me? Can I see it from other angles? Can I learn to accept the parts of myself that I've judged and condemned, which I'm projecting outwards? I'm saying that's not a good thing, but I'm also at the same time saying it's not a good thing from judging myself. So it's all this mirror, it's all this reflection, this is the healing that occurs, this is the spiritual embodied reality. It's not about going off to do spiritual practice and then coming back, and it creates a duality in itself. This is about embodying this realization that every moment is an opportunity to fully appreciate. That's a quality of love, to fully appreciate the moment, especially embodied in the partner. That is like the focal point of your meditation. If you're going off, you're using a mantra or something, or focal point or a fixed point of attention. Here you have your focal point of your partner. Can you give your partner full attention? Can you give your partner full, compassionate, spacious awareness? Can you be present fully? And this is a spiritual path, to arrive fully into the moment. Whatever pathway one takes, it all leads there. But this is a very embodied way of doing it.
Absolutely. And I feel like for those who are walking a spiritual path, to really be able to see your relationship as a spiritual path in itself. And I feel like, once children come along, it's like the path of the householder, which is very much in the yogic tradition. There is the path of the householder. There's the whole ashram there. And it's such a beautiful and very intense opportunity of doing work, because it's like you can't run away from yourself. You have this constant person or people in your universe that are reflecting different parts back to you, and it's like, are you going to look at that now? Are you going to find integration with that? Are you going to address that? Are you going to change this? Are you going to transform it? Are you ready yet? And it's like, there's no hiding, there's no running away from the opportunity that is ever present for, I don't like to say healing, because there's nothing that's necessarily broken. It's these parts of ourselves that we have fragmented off. And it's like, can I love that right now? Can I bring that back home? Can I bring that back into wholeness? And it's really not ever about the other person. The other person is giving you and blessing you with this opportunity. And it's true with any relationship, but it's like these committed relationships where you are not going to run away from it, that you have the most ripe opportunity to do some of this deeper healing work, to really be able to, like, at a soul level, resolve whatever it is that you've agreed to come and incarnate in this physical form to work out. Because, for instance, if there's a person who has a deep wound of abandonment, like with every partnership that person has, that wound of abandonment is going to be poked at. And it's like, do you use the opportunity of that partnership that you're in, hopefully it's a healthy partnership, obviously, but in a safe container, to see, like, wow, if my partner leaves the room, I feel abandoned, but maybe they're leaving the room because they feel overwhelmed by the conversation, or they're feeling overwhelmed by their own experience. And it has nothing to do with, he's not, like, they're not abandoning me. And I'm just using abandonment as an example. Could be any other type of thing. But that wound of abandonment is getting triggered deeply inside of me. And I can say, you know what, this person is always leaving the room, and therefore I feel really bad about that. And I'm just going to end this relationship and go find somebody else who's not going to, like, leave the room when I'm angry. But it's going to come up again and again and again. Yeah. So until there's the opportunity to, like, say, wow, when he left the room, that really triggered something for me. And what is that? Where does that come from? Like, what is the belief around that? It's like, wow, it actually doesn't have anything to do with them, but thank you so much for showing me that. Because now I get to see that more clearly. And the next time that happens, like, I'll be more aware. And it slowly over time can really help to release these stories that we've adopted, that limit us from being able to engage the moment in our fullness and in an open heart of like, again, not like this romantic love, but universal love. And
yeah. And this is part of this 10-year celebration, is reflecting that this is not one time it happens and you learn it. This is this process that is a maturation process of really being together through ups and downs that don't ever end. This is life, ups, downs, this way that we finally, over time, allow ourselves to feel a sense of peace around, and not that every time that there's a down, there's a huge contraction, there's a sense of fear that this is going to be the end. That can happen in the beginning. And sometimes it is the end in the very beginning, until there's a commitment that allows there to be ups and downs, and then it allows the container to not be like this big, but it expands this container for what it means to be alive, to be human, really. And this is what a partnership allows us to not just be pleasant and happy all the time, but it allows us to feel that it's okay to feel emotions. It's okay to be authentic. It's okay to be ourselves. It gives us, through this loving acceptance that the other partner really helps to hold, an ability to love ourselves. But it's like this, it's this process of making peace with all the parts inside of ourselves, all the ways that we judge ourselves, all the ways that we judge the partner. If we were just running away from things that we didn't like, we would never encounter them and what's beyond them. In a partnership, in a family, you go way beyond those things that were initially uncomfortable. And that is where the rubbing is actually taking place. That is where the polishing is happening. That is where the ability to make peace with these deepest sense of boundaries, edges, wounds, the things that are most painful, that we want to run away from. It's where we're allowed to actually feel them fully, wholly, and that's where healing actually occurs. Healing, this is where this making peace occurs, where there's no longer such a charge of wanting to get away, where it's so that creates the pain, trying to get away from something that's perhaps very intense. It's where there's so much pain, is that getting away thing. So it's like going into those places, which can be very challenging. Like in a partnership, there can be very heated situations, but can we find those heated situations each other? And that's really what it comes down to. Can we find each other, or are we just battling with our own minds and projections of the situation, our own neuroses, our own conditions?
Yeah.
Let me say one more thing. So the peace is the key here. We're making peace with all these parts, because if we just are trying to get rid of those things that are unpleasant, then we're going to constantly live in a state of trying to control our world. And if we're trying to control our world because the unpleasant needs to stay out, we're expending a tremendous amount of energy to manipulate the moment, fighting with it, unconsciously, subconsciously. If we make peace with all the parts, then we can truly find peace, because it does not make a difference between whether that's there or not, whether it's present or not. Those things that once were irritating and we wanted to get away, now they can be present, there's a genuine peace, or they're not there, there's a genuine peace. And in that way, there's true freedom.
Yeah. I feel like also when we come into relationships, we're often looking for, and I feel like this is like the codependent aspect of partnerships that can happen, is we're looking for the other person to save us in some way, to complete us, to fulfill some needs that we feel are lacking. And it's not to mean that our partners that we shouldn't honor our needs and honor our partners by also expressing those needs that we have. But it's when we can really love a person for who they are, without all of our projections of what we need them to be, then the relationship comes into a state of freedom. There's one of the elders that we worked with talked about unconditional love one day, and he said, unconditional love is not I love you because you are, or because you do. Is I love you because I love you. I love you in spite of all your shortcomings that are my perception. I love you because I love you. And in that way, like, there's just such a sweetness, because you realize that you no longer need your partner to be the father that you didn't have, or the mother that you didn't have. You don't need your partner to save you from your perceived challenges. Your partner is there as a sovereign person, choosing to share a life with you. And again, as I've said before in this video, that's a gift. That's the gift of partnership, is that we get to bring this heart of unconditional love, to meet one another in this place of sovereignty, and to allow the relationship to serve ideally a bigger purpose than just this idea of a romantic love, which is very fleeting, because there might even be parts of in the trajectory of a relationship where you might not even feel like you love the person in that moment, in that romantic, bubbly type of way, but there's a deeper love and there's a deeper appreciation, and it allows the relationship to serve something really special in this world, where we are so seeking pleasure. We're so seeking something to distract us and take us away from our discomfort and our pain, that we go from relationship to relationship when the relationship is no longer like exciting anymore, or it's not bringing, maybe whatever, it's not fulfilling a need that we feel like we have. We just let it go, and then we go to another relationship, but we never allow ourselves to go deeper than the surface. We never allow ourselves to feel the discomfort, to have the rubbing that allows us to transform, and to allow the relationship to be a really beautiful container for transformation, because we're always running away. We're always seeking the feel good, and we're running away from not, what feels uncomfortable. And I feel like our whole culture is that these days is a throwaway culture. It's very easy for people to just get divorced and say it was too challenging. And I'm not saying, if it's an abusive relationship, or it's a relationship that's very clearly not meeting what it is that you have as a vision for your life, by all means, like, you don't need to stay together. But if it's a good relationship that just has challenges,
and both partners want,
and both partners want to continue to show up and choose that container for transformation, we miss out on that gift. We miss out on the sweetness of that love, because we don't allow ourselves to get to that point. We're always like, oh, this is uncomfortable, I'm going to go find another person. Oh, I want to have my freedom and go out and drink with my buddies every weekend, so therefore I don't want to commit to this beautiful woman, or vice versa. I don't want to commit to this like really awesome man, because I want to see what's available out there. Like,
and so the relationship, just, challenges are part of it, for the rubbing, for the growth. That is the path. To think we're going to avoid that in any dimension of our life is a lie. We have to really understand that this is life, and if we are actually choosing to avoid life, the rubbing, the exchange that's occurring on every level of our being, which is a degree of rubbing, but it's this energy of life, of transformation. It's uplifting and evolving and growing in this way. If we want to run away from that, that's a form of not fully living. But fully living, on another hand, of what marriage can offer, is supporting one another, genuinely wishing for the other to thrive, and having the willingness, the humility to really listen to the other and the other's needs and what would be most supportive, and showing up and really dedicating oneself to this container of togetherness in a huge way, to really allow a huge part of one's sense of fulfillment to be within the service of the other. Because we genuinely love the other. We want the other to thrive, to feel and be free in every way, and to express themselves fully in their fullest joy and happiness and service to the world. And so everything that I can do that can support that, I'm here to do. And that doing gives me great fulfillment. It's a reciprocal thing, because as she feels more and more uplifted and happy and overjoyed and all of this, that bubbles, and that effervescence just fills the environment, and through the relationship is reciprocal, and uplifts the other person. And in a selfless sort of way, giving is also uplifting oneself. In the container, in the committed container of a partnership, this happens. In other types of relationships, it does not necessarily happen in the same way, because you put your energy towards this other person, and the other person puts the energy in some other direction that's not aligned with your mission, purpose, vision, or the container of your life, which you've formed with the other person. It's not like that. So that's part of this blessing of togetherness as well, is that it gives you an outlet for all of your highest aspirations can be channeled in this service of the other, which is like a reciprocal service of oneself, and it is an evolution in that togetherness. And that's when the ideals, the values are very much in alignment and harmony. This happens very, very well. If the partnership shares or does not share the values, the deepest values, and the energy just goes in other directions, this is something that can be improved in a partnership and can be brought into conscious awareness, that the clearer and more harmonious the values, ideals, vision, direction, mission is, the greater that the energy stays contained, spirals upwards, and continues to evolve and grow in the most harmonious way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just to go with that, like when you say that, like there's just such freedom in that. A lot of people feel like the container of commitment is something that's limiting. And in a healthy, committed relationship, it's tremendous. It should bring tremendous freedom and tremendous opportunity for experiencing the limitlessness of yourself and your partner and what's possible, what you can create personally, what your partner can create personally, and then what you can create together, which is something far greater than what each individual can create. So commitment is not something that should be limiting. Commitment should bring just a sense of like, wow, okay, now that I've committed to whatever it is, the partner, to the relationship, to your spiritual growth within the partnership, there's just tremendous spaciousness there. And you don't have to feel afraid of commitment, because there's nothing in a healthy relationship, obviously, there's nothing lacking. If anything, there's only more to realize. There's more abundance and freedom and depth also. It's like this upward but also deep experience of really just fully being free within yourself, being free within the relationship, allowing your partner to be free, and it gives a lot of freedom. So as I said before, when we first came together, we were young and had a lot of ideals about our life and how it was going to pan out and what we wanted to create. And at a certain point, like, that wasn't what was happening, and those ideals and ideas that I had about the relationship were actually creating a lot of tension and conflict, because it was like, well, if we came together for this, then why are we not doing this? Without understanding that there's a natural evolution that happens of each person in the relationship, of the relationship itself. And that vision that initially was like the uniting vision also has to be flexible enough to go through its own transformation process, to continue to mature into what it's going to be. And it's a process. It's like, in relationships, I feel also it can be really almost like a trap, where we put these standards and ideals and visions about how things should be, and then when our partnership doesn't meet that, or life is not presenting us with that exact picture perfect of what we had and initially in the relationship, or at any part of the relationship, and we just fixate on that, then we're losing the bigger picture of just the natural evolution and the nature of change that a relationship goes through. I mean, every season, every moment is we're shifting, we're changing, we're not static. The person that we marry or that we come together with is not the same person that we're going to be in a relationship with. We're not going to be the same person that we were when we began the relationship a few years down the line, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. So there has to be this willingness to shapeshift with your partner, and allow there to always be this curiosity and the newness and just the curiosity of like, okay, who is this person now? This person is not the same person that it was, but like, can I fall in love with this person again? Can I continue to allow myself to open up to these new dimensions of what the relationship brings? Who am I in the context of this relationship? What do I want? And to be radically honest. I mean, I feel like that's a really core, integral part of any relationship, is the radical honesty to communicate these things, to bridge these worlds, to keep the relationship really alive. It's like anytime that we fall back into sort of this state of like sleepwalking in the relationship. It's like that's where a lot of the conflict happens, because like we're like hitting our head against the wall trying to meet this partner or meet ourselves or meet the relationship from this version that's like no longer relevant. Yeah. And it's this constant evolution and this constant dance of togetherness. It's not static. It's yesterday we danced one type of music and that felt good. Tomorrow we have to learn how to dance another type of music together and find how that feels good together. And it's like, it could be exciting, it can be enlivening. So like relationships throughout time don't have to lose their vitality. If anything, is like, how do we keep that vitality alive? How do we keep that spark alive? How do we keep the joy and the celebration, and also like the fascination that we feel when we meet somebody for the first time that's like our potential partner. There's such a intrigue and who is this person, and there's like such an excitement around that, and it's like, well, that excitement can always be there because who that person is and who I am is going to continue to evolve, and it's a beautiful thing to walk together with a person over time, to see their shifts, to see your shifts, to see how just things change.
I think that, the flow, I think that flow is really what comes to mind when I hear you talking about that. It's like the fixation creates rigid boundaries. Fixation, like by its nature, sets limits. And so if there's a fixation upon a projected vision or a way that we believe something is, or an outdated sort of agreement that there was, whether it was conscious or unconscious, about what the relationship is. But if there's a fixation upon any of these levels, or the routines and patterns and ways of relating, the fixation creates stagnation and sense of limitation. But relationship is tremendously liberating by its nature. When two individuals come together out of free will and choice and celebrate one another and celebrate this life, there is a tremendously uplifting, expansive, creative potential happening, and that's alive. The fixation is death. in this sense, fixation creates stagnation and death. The life is this ever blossoming infinite potential of the now, and it requires the ability to allow the relationship to evolve, to grow. And again, the partnership is the ultimate relationship, and it's a reflection of relationship with life. So one can learn how to live by learning how to be in relationship. And listening deeply to the partner helps one to reflect on one's own fixations, limitations, and how one is relating with life. If we can listen deeply, we can humble ourselves and see, okay, how can I improve here? How can I relate in a way that's being asked of me, to create more sense of exchange, meeting the needs of the other, so that life can really be thriving and blossoming forth. And this is this potential of a partnership.
And also with that, like the image that I'm getting, especially because I said about dancing before, is like sometimes the dance is going to be totally different. Your partner's going to be over there dancing something beautiful on their own, and you can sit there and be like, wow, look how joyful they are, look how beautiful they are. And that allowance in a relationship for both parties to be themselves is really important too, because the partnership is not some sort of amalgamation where you both have to become this entity that you lose yourself in it. It's like, how does the relationship allow you to blossom more into who you are, into the beauty of your uniqueness? And how can these two unique beings weave something beautiful together, but without losing what makes them unique? And I feel like that is something that's really important in relationships, and where the radical honesty comes into place because it's like, how can I be the most truthful, authentic me that I can be, so that I can show up in that honesty and that fullness to my partner, and not, not sacrifice and then get into these patterns of resentment, because a lot of the resentment that comes in relationships comes from when another person is sacrificing who they are to try to please the other person, or the perceptions that we have about what the other person wants from us. But again, it's with the whole thing about commitment being the space for tremendous freedom. Relationships allow for you to be the fullest you that you are, and your partner to be the fullest them that they are, and in that way each person thrives, and from that thriving, that relationship thrives, and then it's something that's inspiring in the world too, because people see like, wow, this is a very different model of relationship that societally we've agreed upon, where this like these
roles.
fixed roles. There's nothing fixed in relationships. And if we think about it like on an energetic level, the second chakra, which is the water, it's all about flow, and that's where like the relationships, that's the energy of creation. It's very malleable, it's very fluid, and if that fluidity can exist in the relationship, it's like that's how it will harmonize. That's where the harmonies can where it can be harmonious.
Yeah, I mean, reciprocity, flow, give, receive, express, all of this is the water element, and this is what it takes to be in relationship with any dimension of life, with life itself, with the partner, is this ability to be flexible, where we're not going to rigidly be broken. If the partner is bent out of shape, we're not going to crack. If we crack, then it's a pain. It's our own suffering in that situation, but it also doesn't hold the container of the relationship. So the ability to be like water, to flow, to authentically express oneself, to allow that reflection to also be received fully, and to allow one's shape to change in the relationship, as the container is not a fixed container either. It's this evolving sort of shape form that is always flexing and moving in the ebb and flow of the relationship.
And the communication part is important, because I feel like as partners, we can't just like go on autopilot. There has to be this constant checking in. Is this still working for you? Do we need to do this in a different way? Like, do you feel like you're having the most support to be yourself in this moment? Like, how can we support each other better? And it's this constant dialogue and communication, whether it's a verbal communication or energetic, or but there's this constant like weaving together that allows there to be the harmony for the relationship to really be something that allows life to flow and blossom in a really beautiful way. So communication is so important, and communicating from a very authentic place, because I feel like we've had many conversations that have perhaps been very challenging to have, but it's those relationships that have allowed there to be greater authenticity. And there's not all these ways that we're hiding from ourselves or hiding from the other person. There's just transparency. And in that transparency, there's great respect that comes from for the other person. And it's just a healthy way of relating. Where I feel like in a lot of relationships, that radical honesty and authenticity can also, for many reasons, we don't want to hurt the other person. We're afraid of saying something because we don't want them to withdraw their love from us. There's all these fears and all these things that when we can just strip those away and just be naked. If you think of another aspect of romantic partnership is being able to meet in that place of intimacy. And intimacy comes from a place of trust. But if we're not being honest on some level, that trust is broken, and then there's not the connection, and it's felt, in a very deep way. So just being able to be vulnerable, meet each other constantly and have the difficult conversations and not fear that those difficult conversations are going to break anything, but in fact, what I have found, it strengthens.
Yeah.
It like allows there to be just everything is out in the open, and there's a greater trust that happens there, and there's a greater, just trust.
Yeah, the trust is everything, really. If there's not honesty, authenticity, then there's not that deep sense of trust and stability. And I mean, it really is everything. The honesty is huge, and trust is huge. And these are like fundamentals that are even like smaller, fine grained than those pillars. It's like the elements of a relationship in general. You know, these are aspects of the anatomy of relating.
Yeah. So obviously we've done a lot of reflection, and this video doesn't necessarily cover everything, and I hope it's coherent enough, because there's many different aspects of it all. But I hope that this is helpful in some way, because it's been quite the journey of being together for this amount of time. There's been tremendous growth. There's been a lot of learning, and there will continue to be tremendous growth and tremendous learning. But it would have been helpful to have even just some of these things or context from the beginning.
These perspectives help in a huge way to navigate the challenges, to have this orientation towards what we're going to experience, what is unavoidable within a relationship, and just the context of what a relationship is, and some tools about how to work in those situations that are challenging, and even in the situations that are not challenging. You know, it's also important to use those moments, to appreciate those moments, to celebrate those moments as well, because it's all for the highest growth, you know.
And to know that relationships are not to be challenge free. I mean, that I think is a big thing. Don't run away from the challenges. Let the challenges be the hot plate that allows things to be transformed. It's like the fire. You know, the fire helps to transform and transmute energy. But if we're too afraid to get into those heated moments, then we miss that really beautiful opportunity for just immense transformation that can happen. So relationships are not meant to be challenge free, and the challenges, if met consciously and intentionally, can really be a blessing to go deeper into the relationship, to know your partner better, to know yourself better, and to allow the love to deepen and to mature in a certain way. That I feel like if we're constantly avoiding challenges, we don't really give ourselves the opportunity. And relationships are beautiful, and they're not all roses and sweetness. And I feel like there's a greater sweetness that can be embraced when we can embrace all the flavors of the relationship, you know, the bitterness and the spiciness and the sourness, and you know, there's such a spectrum of experience within the relationship. But ultimately, it's all to allow there to be a deeper love.
Yep. So we have the intention to share more and talk about those foundational pillars and the fundamentals of a healthy relationship and such. And yeah.